Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي امري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل يا عبادي الذين أسرفوا على أنفسهم لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله إن الله يغفر الذنوب جميعا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. صدق الله العظيم. Alhamdulillah, my dear respected brothers, sisters in Islam. Alhamdulillah, Fadila of Allah Rabbul Izzah Rabbul Alameen, where we are entering into, or inshallah in a couple of days, for some tomorrow, for others, we're going to enter into the the last half of the last 10 nights. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, one of the key aspects of the last 10 nights of Ramadan is to find forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why we're constantly reciting Allahumma innaka afuwwun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anna ya afu, where we're seeking pardoning from Allah, not even forgiveness. We're asking Allah to actually pardon us. And many times I'm always asked that, well, what is the best way to seek forgiveness from Allah? And there are some people that I know, and subhanAllah, even when I was growing up, before I actually understood Allah's maghfirah, Allah's mercy, Allah's rahmah, Allah's mannerism in how He loves to forgive and how He loves to pardon, I used to think, oh my God, I did this and this is so bad. I remember one time I'd gotten into a fight and I'd ended up hurting the person so bad that it broke their orbital bone in the of the eye. He was hospitalized. And then subhanAllah, one of my teachers said to me, how are you going to answer to Allah on the day of judgment for what you have done? Because you're going to have to deal with Him on the day of judgment because you've done Him wrong. And at that point, obviously I was young, and I said to my teacher, I said, yeah, but Sheikh, he's not even a Muslim, who cares? And my Ustad got so angry with me. And he said to me, he said, is he a creation of Allah? And I said, yes. And my Ustad said to me, it doesn't matter if someone is Muslim or non-Muslim. The aspect of hukukul ibad, the rights of the slaves of Allah, are what matter. It could be a Muslim or a non-Muslim. If you do something wrong to them, then you will have a court case with Allah until and unless that person forgives you. So immediately when my Ustad said that, I went, not having too much hikmah, and I got into contact with him. His parents got angry with me. They're like, what are you doing? Why are you here? And all this other stuff. The dad actually slapped me. The boy's dad slapped me, and I stayed calm. I stayed completely calm, even though I knew I could probably take him out. But I stayed calm because I knew I had done wrong. And then I asked him for forgiveness while he's in the hospital. And the guy literally spit at me, right? And at that point, I left because I then realized that you have to also use hikmah and seek forgiveness at the right time as well, but don't waste time in seeking forgiveness. Now, that seeking forgiveness is from the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But many a times we become mujrim. We become wrongdoers when it comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And today in particular, I was just telling Molana Rizwan, I was going to ask him if he could lead the program because my throat is hurting so bad because I've been doing certain things and I was vomiting at Maghrib time, right after Maghrib. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to ask him to do the program for me today because, mashallah, I trust him completely with doing these programs. But then, while we were going through the surahs today, Surah Zumar, when we were going through this, when we were going through what is known as Alif Lam Mim Sajda, right? When we were going through these surahs, all I keep thinking about is Subhanallah. Allah keeps talking repeatedly about His mercy. At the end of Surah Zumar, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He says, وَسِيكَ الَّذِينَ إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ زُمَرًا, when He's talking about those that are going to be given the glad tidings of going into Jannah, what their condition is going to be. Those that are going to be given the really bad news of going to Jahannam, what their condition is going to be. And then I just kept thinking about the end ayah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's literally going to describe how the malaikas are going to rejoice on the day of judgment. On the day of judgment, where they're going to go, and it's going to be وَتَرَى الْمَلَائِكَةَ هَافِينَ مِنْ حَوْلِ الْعَرْشِ. They're going to raise the arsh. You know how, and I've explained this before, like someone, shoots the winning goal and people pick him up and they're just carrying him around. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing how the arsh is going to be carried as a celebration with the malaikas that they're going to be doing. And it brings me back to understanding, because then we went through the ayah where we look at the sacrifices that those that were beloved to Allah in this dunya, not even Anbiya. I'm not talking about the Anbiya, because the Anbiya, obviously, they were the most beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They were sent down to deliver the message of Allah. But those that literally went through literal torture and ended dying in such a way, when we look at the story in the court of Fir'aun of وَأُفَوِّضُ أَمْرِي إِلَى اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ بَصِيرٌ بِالْعِبَادِ, where this man, just because he was saying Allahu Rabbi wa Rabbuk, that Allah is my Rabb and He's your Rabb, to Fir'aun, they take him, they boiling water, and it's not just, not boiling water, but they boil oil in a massive pan, and they're boiling it and boiling it and boiling it. And for those of us that have fried food, we know that when you throw something like even water, or even, if you're going to fry some chicken or pakoras in Ramadan, subhanAllah, you first test it by throwing a little bit of the mixture inside to see if it's hot enough. Subhanallah, and you see it bubbling and burning, like it just starts to fry. They make it that hot, and they take this man who's in the court of Fir'aun. He's one of the trusted advisors, but when he sees Musa alayhi salam and he sees the muqabila, the battle between those that were sahir, those that were the magicians, and Musa alayhi salam, and when Musa alayhi salam throws down the asa and eats all of those little strings that look like snakes, and it eats them, he immediately takes shahada. And when he takes shahada, he seeks forgiveness from Allah, also because he now has tawheed. And then he goes and he says to Fir'aun that, are you going to kill a man? Are you going to punish a man in Musa alayhi salam just because he believes in Allah being his Rabb? And then Fir'aun says to him that I am the Rabb. And he says, no, Allahu Rabbi wa Rabbuk. Allah is your Rabb, He's his Rabb, He's your Rabb, and He's my Rabb. And because of that, he is then walked off of a plank. And then he's told that either you accept that I am your Rabb, or become an example for everyone and be thrown into this hot burning oil. You have a choice. And subhanAllah, what does he do? He chooses Allah. And he goes into the fire. He gets thrown into the boiling oil, and he's fried to death. But the thing that is the most important aspect, and we know about the woman in Fir'aun's court, Fir'aun's niece, There was a woman who was a handmaid who used to comb the hair of this niece. And subhanallah, when she's doing this, she hears, when she drops the comb, she hears this handmaid saying, Ya Allah. And she praises Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the niece goes and tells on her. And Fir'aun brings her, and he doesn't fry her, he fries her eldest son, then her third son, then her second son, and then the infant that she's got, the infant little baby. He says that if you don't believe that I am your Rabb, I will throw this child in and I will allow it to be fried in front of you. In the mom's womb, the mom's hands. And anyone who has children will know how difficult it is to part from children. And that child is thrown in, and she says, Allahu Rabbi wa Rabbuk, and she jumps in. But the reason why I'm mentioning this is because, inshallah, in 2 days' time, we're going to be coming across ayahs in Surah Hashr, where Allah clearly asks, and He says, لا يستوي أصحاب النار وأصحاب الجنة أصحاب الجنة هم الفائزون. That don't think that the people of Ashabul Nar, the people of fire, and the people of Jannah are equal, because the people of Jannah are far greater. But that is where we as Muslims have to really focus. Because getting into Jannah, number one, is not easy. It's easy, but it's not easy. Having difficulties removed from our lives is easy, but it's not easy. Having doors of rahmah, of Allah's mercy opening up for us is easy, but it's not easy. And what do I mean by this? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he says in a very clear hadith, and it starts with man lazim al-istighfar, that the one who engages in istighfar, the one who engages in seeking forgiveness from Allah, that for them there will be min diqin makhraja, that they will have a way out, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make a way out for the one who is constantly seeking forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They will be given rizq from ways they can't even imagine. And we look at the ayah which we're going to be reading. I think it's going to be on Sunday night. We're going to be reading where these ayahs specifically talk about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to make a way out for the ones who are having taqwa with Allah. And these are some of my favorite ayahs that I always mention in khutbah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, and this is at the end of the second ayah, where Allah, He says, وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ بَالِغُ أَمْرِهِ قَدْ جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدْرًا. That the one who has taqwa with me, I will make makhraj for him regardless of whatever situation you're in. But the conditions are, and I will give him from ways that فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ, his mind can't even imagine. But the condition is you have to have tawakkul with me at all times. You have to have reliance that I am sufficient for you. Even when you're seeking forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for what you have done, you have to have reliance that Allah, you will forgive me. And when you go in with that attitude and you go in with that thought process, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make a way out from whatever difficulty you're going through. I don't care if you're struggling financially. I don't care if you're going through difficulties with your spouse or your family or your parents or your children, or you're going through difficulties at work, or you're going through any kind of difficulties, even if you're going through oppression, as long as you have taqwa with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will make a way out for you and me. Now imagine, and I've said this story 100 times before, imagine Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala 4 ayahs are revealed for the one who has murdered, who has killed the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Hamza radiallahu anhu. These ayahs are revealed specifically for him with the questions that he has. And the last ayah that is revealed for him to take shahada, is the one that I started with. Where Allah, He says, قُلْ يَا عِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ أَسْرَفُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ لَا تَقْنَطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ جَمِيعًا إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. Hey Allah, specifically saying, He doesn't say قُل and then goes into it. He says قُل يَا عِبَادِ. Even in the aspect where He's saying, seek forgiveness from me, because if Allah is talking to someone who has committed a sin, right? If I've committed a sin, that's who Allah is talking to, right? Ya ibad, the one who has done sin. Ibadi alladhina asrafu la taqnatu min rahmatillah. Do not forget my mercy. Don't lose hope in the mercy that I have. But look at the beautiful way Allah starts out with. He says, Ya ibad, O my slave. O my slave. And that is such a beautiful way, because ibad is not just slave, but it's my worshipper. And when we turn to Allah, seeking forgiveness from Allah, believe me, that is the easiest way to gain peace in your life. And I am going to go into this, inshallah. We won't pray the salah today, we'll pray it tomorrow, because I don't think we're going to have enough time to go through it. But there are ways to seek forgiveness from Allah, right? You have in a hadith, you'll find it in, I think it's in Muslim or Bukhari, I can't remember which of the kitabs, but it's in the Sahihain, where the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says that recite Sayyidul Istighfar. Sayyidul Istighfar is the master, it's the head, the main aspect of seeking forgiveness. And that one, I'll send it off, inshallah, Malana, we'll send it out in the group if everyone's on the group or in the Get Serious with Allah group. But you can do it through that, where the dua is, Allahumma anta rabbi la ilaha illa anta khalaqatani wa ana abduka wa ana an hatika wa wa'dika mastata'u a'udhu bika min sharri ma sana'tu abu'u laka bi ni'matika alayya wa abu'u bi dhanbi faghfir li fa innahu la yaghfiru dhunuba illa anta. You can say this. Don't say it in this manner when you're seeking forgiveness from Allah. I'm just saying it for the sake of time. But you can recite this dua, but read it with the meaning, and then seek forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say, Ya Allah, forgive me. You can also seek forgiveness because unfortunately, we as an ummah we think that we have to have a prescription. You know how they say, oh, I need a meal plan or a diet plan if I want to lose weight. In order for us to get forgiveness, we want some sort of istighfar plan, right? Istighfar doesn't happen like this. It can happen when you're seeking forgiveness from Allah, but what I'm talking about is tawbatan nasuha. That tawbah, that which will gain acceptance, and it'll be pure, and it'll be in a manner in which when you've asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're destined to be forgiven, right? Where the way you ask Allah is what matters. Imagine Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala is walking around the Kaaba, and again, this has some broken chains, but I'm giving you this as an example. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala is walking around the Kaaba, doing tawaf around the Kaaba. And he's having a literal conversation with Allah Rabbul Izzah Rabbul Alameen, where he's saying constantly, he's saying, Ya Rabb, oh my Rabb, oh Allah, only you know what is written inside of Lawhul Mahfuz. And only you know, oh Allah, whether Umar is destined for Jahannam or Jannah. Umar ibn Khattab, with the nickname that was given to him, Al-Faruq, meaning that he would not let falsehood and truth come together. It's like shattered glass, right? It's literally like shattered glass. You can't bring shattered glass back together. You just can't put it back together. It's finished. Literally, that is what Faruq means, to break something and shatter it in a manner in which it cannot come back together. This is Umar al-Faruq, who would not let batil come together with haqq. There was no gray line between him. And he is going and he is asking, he is one of the 10 companions promised Jannah, and he's walking around the Kaaba and he's saying, Ya Allah, only you know what is written inside of Lawh al-Mahfuz. Only you know if Umar is destined for Jannah or Jahannam. Only you know what the decision is going to be on Yawm al-Qiyamah. But oh Allah, since no one knows, not even Umar, I ask that if it's written that I'm destined to hell, to the hellfire, that you just change that and no one will know, and allow me to enter into Jannah. And that is the level that we need to get to. And it doesn't need rocket science. You don't need to be an alim. You don't need to be a hafiz. You don't need to be well versed in deen. You just have to be well versed in knowing how to ask and how to communicate. What do I mean by this? How many of us really have a conversation with Allah? How many of us? And I'm not just talking about, oh Allah help me. No. Sometimes, and I know my kids, they used to giggle about this sometimes. When we would be on long drives and we'd be listening to the Quran, an ayah of Quran would come up, and then all of a sudden I'm just mouthing to myself. But I'm not mouthing in terms of just talking in the air. I actually sometimes go into a conversation with Allah, saying, Ya Allah, such and such ayah, like with this Qul ya ibadi alladhina asrafu, I always go and I always talk to Allah, saying, Ya Allah, you know what my sins are. You know what my shortcomings are. You know what I've done in my past. You know what I'm doing now. You know what I'm going to do in the future. Ya Allah, I can't even look myself in the mirror. I don't even like leading salah because I know what type of a mujrim I am, whatever it is. But Allah, I ask that you forgive me, and that Allah, I ask that you give me hidayah and keep me on the straight path. And when you start talking to Allah in this manner, and you talk to Allah, just like we talk to our loved ones when we're talking to, for example, if someone's got a wife, you call her by a nickname. You say, "Oh, sweetie," Some people say, "Oh, my love," with their wife, right? With their parents, they will call upon, like my kids sometimes, when they call me with a loving way, they'll be like, "Dad," right? Just that loving way they call upon me. I always say that when you call upon Allah, don't call upon Him in a harsh manner. Don't call upon Him as if you're just talking to a friend. Make Allah your beloved. Make Allah someone that is so dear to you that you can't live without. And especially in the time when you're seeking forgiveness, when you're seeking maghfirah from Allah, when you're calling and you're standing and you're sitting there, think about the sins that you may have committed. Think about the haram that you may have done. Think about the dhulm you may have done to someone. Think about the fact that you've missed a sunnah or something that you could have done of khair, of good deed, think about that. Think about, your wasting of time. Start to reminisce about the wrong that you may have done. Maybe we've done such bad sins in the past. You know what I mean? That we pray no one gets to know. Think about that and then go to Allah and ask Him. And just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just like He calls upon us when He says, Ya ibad, Qul ya ibad, la taqnatu min rahmatillah. Inna Allah yaghfiru dhunuba jami'a. Innahu huwal ghafurur rahim. And ask Allah when you raise your hands. Don't do it in English. I mean, don't do it, you don't have to do it in Arabic. Because when we do it in Arabic, we don't know how to actually call out to Him. Because we just say, Ya Allah, Ya Rahman. And those are beautiful ways of calling out to Him. But if you don't know what they mean, and you're just saying it, it's not really going to sit in your heart. So when I call out to Allah, I sit there saying, Oh, my beloved Allah. Oh, my beautiful Allah. Oh, Allah, please, I'm begging you, oh Allah. Ya Rabb, oh, my owner. Oh, the most merciful. Oh, my beloved. Ya Allah, please, I'm asking you, please forgive me. Talk to Allah and say, Ya Allah, this is what I engaged in, and I'm asking you for your forgiveness. Because believe me, when we ask Allah about this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to definitely listen to that. There is a beautiful hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he said that لو بلغت ذنوبك أنان السماء, that you can do sins and your sins will pile up. You know, when we're standing behind the Quran, sometimes I hurt when I see brothers that are upstairs that aren't praying. They're slacking off. You're staying in the masjid. And it hurts me because it makes me realize you don't realize that we don't realize the value of each sajda that we're going to get. Sometimes I see brothers coming into the masjid and they wait for the imam to come up from the second sajda and join them while they're standing. And I just think when I'm coming into the masjid and I see that, and I'm like, my God, man, that's one extra sajda that you can do in front of Allah. And maybe that sajda is going to be what's going to take me to Jannah. Maybe. So why waste that sajda? Why waste that one rak'ah or the two rak'ahs? We're in the masjid. And we don't want to pray. We want to go, Ya subhanallah. And we don't realize that it's the connection that you have with Allah Rabbul Izzah Rabbul Alameen that is going to make the biggest difference in akhirah. I'm not talking about how many rak'ahs you're praying. But if you go into sajda, why? Because Allah, I love you and I want to put my head down on the ground in front of you? Maybe. Maybe that is going to be my maghfirah that I'm going to gain to go into Jannah. You can be the biggest of alim. You can be the greatest of hafiz, the greatest of qari. But if you don't go to sajda and seek forgiveness from Allah, and you don't say, Ya Allah, forgive me with that sincere conviction, I don't know what condition will be of ours. And it tells us what the condition is of our heart. Because what it does is it means that my heart has hardened so much. It has hardened so much that I can't seek forgiveness from Allah in a proper way. And if I can't do that, then I should be seeking forgiveness from Allah to seek forgiveness from Allah. And that's the main thing that we have to do. Because when we seek forgiveness from Allah, wallahi, I promise you, your life will become easy. Regardless of whatever difficult situation you're going through, If you gain the maghfirah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your life will become easy. I'm telling you, and my brothers and sisters in Islam, I'm begging us, all of us, me included, when we're calling out today, when Mufti Sulaiman was making the dua between the Taraweeh and the Witr Salah, look at the way he was calling out to Allah, and it's an example for us. He was saying, "Eh, mere pyare Allah, oh my beloved Allah, oh my beautiful Allah, oh the one who I love," and that is one of the du'as that I always say. We have we have to train ourselves to love Allah. The best training is to look at our hal and to look at our condition and to see, where do I sit in front of Allah? You know, I know what is in my heart. You know, I know what we have done and what wrong we have done. If we're going through difficulty, a lot of times people just push this off and, oh, I've got nazar, I've got hasad, I've got this. We never look at our own selves. What is the quality of my salah? If for 2 rakahs, Allah gave everything to the Sahaba. Just following the sunnah of Rasulullah SAW of doing miswak, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them victory without even having to go to war. He put that khawf inside of the hearts of those that were coming at us. When we call out, subhanAllah, we're so busy about ourselves. We see brothers and sisters that are dying around the world, but we become so engulfed in me, we forgot about everyone else. And the reason why the Ummah of Muhammad al-Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam was so successful, was so strong in the spread of Islam, and that Islam protected everyone around it, was because they were selfless. They were selfless. And we as an ummah have become selfish. And when we become selfless, it becomes where we stop committing the sins. Because you're going to get to a point when you're constantly asking and you're reminding yourself of the wrong and the dhulm that you've done towards Allah, you yourself will get tired of committing those sins. And then you will get to a stage where you're going to love bowing to Allah. You're going to love making sajda to Allah. I'm telling you, you know how they say when someone gets in the zone? The most unbelievable zone to be in is when you're in sajda to Allah. The sweetness of that sajda in front of Allah, and you're seeking forgiveness from Allah, and you have that conversation with Allah. Wallahi, my brothers, I cannot explain to you in words how amazing of a feeling that is. And to be able to do it multiple times, only those that Allah is blessed to experience know it, and only Allah knows the quality of the conversation. So much so that sometimes Allah extends the difficulty, the test that a slave of his is going through, because he loves the way the slave is asking for forgiveness from Allah. Ya Allah. Can you imagine? To the point where the malaikas go to Allah and say, Ya Allah, this slave of yours is asking you, oh Allah, we know you hear him. Oh Allah, take him out of the difficulty that he's going through. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, does it not sound beautiful? The way he's calling upon me? And the malaikas say, oh Allah, it's so beautiful with the way he's calling upon me. So he says, I just want to hear him calling upon me a little bit more. Because Allah loves the way you call out to him. Now, can you imagine you get to that state with Allah and you seek forgiveness from him? Now, the way I normally pray my salat al-tawbah, and by the way, Like I said, I'm an open book this year. I start with the rakatain that I talked about, making sure that I read first rakah Surah Yasin, Surah Waqia, and Surah Mulk in the second rakah. Those are my salah of shukr, right? Of 2 rakats of nawafil of tahajjud. Then the next 6 rakahs that I pray, amongst them is always 2 rakah of tawbah. Always. And within that, again, these are ayahs that resonate with me. I'm not saying that you have to do this, but these are ayahs that resonate with me. And I always start with Surah Hashr, starting from يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون, all the way down till هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو, until the end. I always start with that. Why? Because I love the way Allah's names come one by one by one by one. الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار العزيز الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما يشركون هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور. And then this part where it praises Allah. له الأسماء الحسنى, talks about the beautiful names. So that's why I start. And again, this is the way it resonates with me. I also often repeat the ayah قُلْ يَا عِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ أَسْرَفُوا. Constantly, I repeat that ayah. Why? Because that reminds me of the maghfirah of Allah. So in the first rakah, I will also read the last 2 ayahs of Surah Baqarah. Because even the last 2 ayahs of Surah Baqarah, the du'as that are contained in there, وَعَفْوَ عَنَّا وَاغْفِرْ لَنَا وَارْحَمْنَا أَنْتَ مَوْلَانَا فَانْصُرْنَا عَلَى الْقَوْمِ الْكَافِرِينَ. Those ayahs resonate with me because Allah says, لَا يُكَلِّفُ اللَّهُ نَفْسًا إِلَّا وُسْعَهَا. I will not burden you with more than what you can handle. Allah is clearly saying that. So whatever sin I've done, Allah will not burden me that will overwhelm me in the sin and it will drown me. Allah will not bring any kind of test that I cannot handle. Allah will take care of me. I know He will do that. And then, subhanAllah, there's an ayah that after those ayahs, I also go to, subhanAllah, in Surah Ma'idah, one of my favorite ayahs, where Allah, He says, إِن تُعَذِّبْهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ عِبَادُكَ. That when this ayah was revealed, our beloved Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you know the hadith where it says that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stood for such a long time in Qiyam that his feet had swollen and his beard had become drenched, filled with his tears, and there were marks of the tears that had come running down the eyes. It was this ayah. It was an ayah where Rasulullah ﷺ was constantly repeating over and over and over again, saying that in tu'adhibhum فَإِنَّهُمْ ibaduk, that, oh Allah, they are your slaves. If you want to give adhab, then, oh Allah, this is up to you. You can give them because we're all your slaves. But oh Allah, if you forgive them, then you are the mighty and wise. Just repeated that. So I recite that. And then in the second rakah is where I read the end of Surah Hashr. And then I will read the Qul Ya Ibad at the end, even though it goes, the order is mixed up, because the Hashr should be at the end. But I read that in the last ayah, as my last ayah repeatedly. Sometimes I'll also recite, وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ. I'll read this ayah from Surah Imran, right? But these four are what I always recite when I'm reading Salat al-Tawbah, right, for myself. And the reason why I do that is because the meaning of those resonates with me. And I want you to find the ayahs that resonate with you where you literally feel like you're talking to Allah. So that when you fall into sajda and you ask Allah for forgiveness, it is something that is fluid because you've already prepared yourself when you were standing in Qiyam. So that is the way that I do it. And then obviously, inshallah, maybe tomorrow, even though we're not supposed to do this actual salah in congregation, but I do it at least one time in congregation in Ramadans, just to make sure that you're refreshed, you know how to pray it. And for those that don't know how to pray it, they learn how to pray it, which is Salat al-Tasbih, right? Again, Salat al-Tasbih, the other name of Salat al-Tasbih is Salat al-Tawbah, right? And this is from a Sahih hadith as well. It is from a hadith, it's mashhur, in which the Prophet ﷺ did teach, right? So when we seek forgiveness from Allah, you have to constantly think about Allah. Talk to Allah. Talk to Him just like you're going to talk to the one who you are closest to. You know how sometimes you call your friend and you're depressed and stuff and you're talking? My friend is Allah. I don't need a phone. I don't need to go over to their house or something. I don't need to hang out because my hanging out is every single day. And wherever I am, I try to make sure I keep the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala around me. And I keep that open door. I talk to Him whenever I want. Sometimes, people will probably be thinking I'm crazy when I'm driving. Then I'm just talking. If I'm alone in the car and then I'm talking now, good thing is we have Bluetooth, so they don't think you're crazy now. But back in the 80s and 90s, subhanAllah, when I'd be driving, people would be looking at me like, oh my God, this guy's crazy, or he's talking to some jinn or something, right? But in reality, I'm just talking to Allah. And that's the state that I want all of us to get to. Whether we're adults, whether we're children, whether we're old, because even we went through that, right? I think you read these ayahs, right, Malana, today, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about nutfa. From nutfa, then you become atfal, then you become shaykha, and then you become back to what your start was. SubhanAllah, it's a whole circle. And from the beginning to the end, if we can keep Allah in mind and our friend, inshallah, our khatima will be of khair. Our end will be of good, inshallah. Let's go ahead and get ready for Qiyam al-Layl. Is it 12:19? Walana, you ready? Inshallah. Wait, before we do, let's go ahead and do the salawat. Bismillah. La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. 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 صلى الله عليه وسلم 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 لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم 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 لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم 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 لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وسلم. بسم الله. Close this off. Bsmillah. Malana, you ready?